No matter what role you play in a documentary, good storytelling is key. Whether you're pitching to an investor, directing a camera crew, or editing the final piece, story connects everything together and makes a project worthwhile. As with any new endeavor, starting with the basics is the key to understanding every concept that lies ahead. As such, we will be looking at how theme, motivation, and the dramatic arc, with its exposition, rising action, turning point, falling action, and denouement, work together in order to produce riveting stories.
Every good story starts with a solid theme, and documentaries are no exception. Great documentaries have a powerful underlying subject that reoccurs throughout the film. For instance, though Bowling for Columbine was a documentary exploring the reasons for shootings at a school in Littleton, Colorado, the underlying themes were human indifference, gun control, racism, and the problems of America. Of course, themes don't always stem from the people in the documentary. Even though Earth is a factual story about different areas of our world, it still had themes of environmental activism and the human qualities in nature. Overall, theme is what a movie is all about, so they give a documentary cohesion and a type of emotion.